Well, I guess so much for my warning that might be making fewer videos. The exploitness has responded some more on economic theory. So he's just so outrageous that it really deserves a response. I mean, this rhetoric is in the minds of a lot of people, and it is just so vacant. I mean, just vacant. It's, more vacant than religion. It's without any justification. His justification is, yeah, well, the majority thinks so, or some other nonsense. I mean, even religious people try to do better than, well, most people believe in God, as evidence of the rationality of the belief. I mean, it's just so weak, so feeble. So anyway, and it's a conversation people really look. This is serious stuff. Economics. It's what makes the world go round. And bad economics has made our world go round the wrong way.
Businesses set that price and they pay the cost of doing business, but consumers agree to pay it. It's not like we're making consumers pay. We're forcing people to buy anything. I mean,
yeah, you are. When something's established as a premise of doing business, like a business tax, for example, the consumer is forced to pay it. Okay, there's no choice not to pay the passed-on cost because no business is allowed to operate outside of that continuum. It's almost like, and when there and that can happen without explicit law. So back in the 70s, when there were credit cards were just starting to really get popular. I worked for a restaurant where this whole discussion took place because there was this real problem because cash customers were getting screwed, okay, because the credit card customers weren't paying the freight for using a credit card. All right, there was a liability to the business accepting credit cards, okay, because the business had to pay the credit card companies a tax essentially on the purchase. And so in essence, cash customers were subsidizing credit card customers. Now, if a business chose not, to charge credit card customers more money, okay, then the credit card customers aren't going to do business with them. So it's a liability because they can't do what's right, they can't do what's fair, because then the consumers are going to lose their mass appeal. They either have to choose cash customers or credit card customers. Now, they can't be competitive in business if they start discriminating based on who can be a customer. And so essentially it became something where you had no choice. A cash customer could never escape being abused and being obligated to finance credit cards. They had no choice, and that happens in business. And so that's what happens with bankruptcy, is we don't have a choice to choose to do business with companies that take full liability, full responsibility for their acts. And such a company cannot compete if the other companies are giving a free ride. Obviously, a company that did take responsibility wouldn't be competitive because he's not taking advantage of a rip-off, a consumer rip-off that all the other companies can take advantage of. So it becomes a cost that's hidden, and it becomes a cost the consumers have no control over. All right, that's how it gets passed on. All right, there's no choice involved.
I said before, bankruptcy is when liabilities outweigh assets. So when investors invest in a company that is making bad decisions, that is not working right, the investor pays for that dearly. They pay by the whole entire cost of their investment.
Yeah, well, look, losing their investment capital has nothing to do with taking full responsibility. So it's still a lie. It's still bullshit. I mean, you still haven't justified how in an Adam Smith perfect free market, how this idea of bankruptcy, this isn't free market now it's a controlled market. Now you've created a foundation that nobody can fall through all of a sudden. You've created the net. And who's financing the net? The customers are financing the net. And that's the bottom line. The consumers are. And they're doing it without choice. They're doing it because everybody's going to grab hold. Everybody's going to play with a net. Who's going to play without the net? Nobody. Nobody's that stupid. So if the net's going to be provided free, then so it's basically a government subsidy of Adam Smith capitalism for a government to endorse bankruptcy. All right, so you still haven't explained why bankruptcy provides anything vital. All it creates is an incentive to be grotesquely reckless. Okay, because the players up there, the risk takers, now have a safety net. Okay, now their kids aren't going to be liable for their mistakes. They've got an exemption from liability. Their family won't get ruined. They won't lose their house. They won't lose their life. They won't end up in the gutter where they belong. Okay, because they realistically, the stupid risk taker, or the fraudulent risk taker, which is even worse. The one who get rich quick schemer. That might not be actually committing a crime, but is definitely, by any logical standard, engaged in an activity that is completely unproductive and not likely to succeed in the long run, only in the short run. Those people get this free ride. They're immune to the gutter. Where the kid born in Brazil or something is fucked. He's guttered. Okay, he doesn't have any choice. He never gets out. He never escapes. He committed no crime whatsoever. He didn't run any scheme. He didn't play any game. All right, he didn't do any high wire acts. He didn't take any risk whatsoever, and there's no net for him. So why do we have a net for these people? All right, so explain that. Explain in the Adam Smith context of a perfect free market why people would be exempt from liability. It's a fraud. It's a fake. It's breaking the system. All right, and I think this is good enough opportunity where we're on this subject of bankruptcy. I mean, there's really two subjects here, so you can do 10 parts of videos, but you really have to deal with the two subjects, and that is the contrivance of bankruptcy and the legacy contrivance of inheritance. Neither one have any place in economic theory, in your free market theory. Both of them break the free market paradigm completely. They just destroy any idea of a race, a competition that's anywhere near fair. So those are the two issues you're going to have to deal with. So in doing the Zeitgeist video, it came upon me that here's the other part of the bankruptcy racket. Is when the Federal Reserve, they allow this fractional reserve banking. So, okay, the federal government says, well, look, if we don't allow that, then what's going to happen is that investment capital is going to be very expensive. So if you want to borrow money, you're going to have to pay the capitalists a huge amount of money for them to give you this money. Okay, because there's going to be a lot of competition for the money. And so that's very destructive to the economy, because then Wright brothers and people like that with a good idea aren't going to have any capacity to invest in their good idea. And so their good idea is just going to die, and it's not going to be developed. And so it's very unproductive to a society not to have some way to encourage people to work on things, to be productive, to have some capital to do that with. All right, so that's why we say, okay, we'll do this fractional reserve thing, and it basically means banks can lend more money than they have. All right, and the ratio is supposed to be 10 to 1, 10%. They have to have 10% real assets to the amount of money they've loaned out. So what the federal government does is it jumps in and helps out and says, here, I'm going to give you some more money. So you can. So in a sense, it would be one thing if the government just guaranteed the 10% against a bank losing it. So the bank could, still glean profits off this money it didn't really have that it lent out, but the government would just take responsibility for that. But what the government does is it gives them the 90%. It gives them the fake money, the money that isn't collateralized by the bank. And then when that money is lost through the inevitable, defaulted loans, the government's never paid back. Okay, the money is just destroyed. Okay, so in a sense, it's like the bank has lost a percentage of its liability because it's not paying a price for the losses. The governments end up footing the bill for the losses, and the bank is gaining the advantage of being able to lend more money. Now, the price the banks are paying for that is that capital becomes less and less valuable, because you can lower the interest rates will go lower and lower and lower. So you're not going to make as much money on investment capital in a bank. The banks won't be able to pay as high interest because they are lending money at such a low interest rate. All right, but the advantage is that yes, you allow people to invest in things. But the way these banks now have engineered the system, like I said, it's just everything has become a 10 to 1 ratio of debt. There's no real collateral behind all this economy. The whole economy has been uncollateralized. And my point is if the rich try to extract all that uncollateralized wealth, the only way they can extract it is to force the poor to do more work and the middle class to do more work. Because the only way you can make that money meaningful, and to keep it meaningful, is somebody has to be more productive.